Hey, Vsauce! SWEGTA here.
A common concern I often hear from Bully fans whenever the topic of Bully 2 is brought up is, they couldn't make the game today. Usually the argument being made here is that Bully was highly controversial upon its release, and that people have become too sensitive about these types of games, or that Rockstar simply don't want to take the risk. Like the title of this video, the question is, can Rockstar Games make Bully 2 today?
So what is the answer? Well, let's find out. But in case that doesn't convince you, let's have a look at some of the controversies that Bully went through upon release.
As some of you may know, in 2005 there was a protest that took place outside of the Rockstar New York City office.
I remember that Bully had sort of been announced in some way, and there were kind of protests happening. Like an organization that was worried that they knew that there was going to be a Rockstar game that took place in a high school, and they were afraid it was basically going to be like a GTA, you know, shoot 'em up in a high school. There were like protests, small ones, but outside of the Rockstar headquarters, and I remember having to go there, I don't remember why, to maybe do a read through or sign paperwork or something. People outside kind of angry, and that was like, oh man, that's kind of, I hadn't seen that before.
This protest was spearheaded by Jack Thompson and Ron Moten, the leader of the Peaceoholics, a non-profit organization focused on the prevention of youth violence. Peaceoholics was formed in 2004, and only a year later they would catch wind of Rockstar's brand new game, Bully. The sad part about the Peaceoholics is that they really did have good intentions. These were not a bunch of opportunists like Jack Thompson, nor were they like the obnoxious talking heads on Fox News. These were parents and families deeply worried about crime and violence plaguing their communities. The group has actually provided community outreach that some claim have helped them escape crime and gang involvement. It doesn't really excuse how dismissive they were of the arguments people made in defense of Rockstar Games and Bully, but if nothing else, we can at least say they were not as bad as Jack Thompson. And speaking of Jack Thompson, I'm gonna do my best to quickly summarize some of the highlights of the Jack Thompson vs. Bully saga, as I've already done a more in-depth video on it. Immediately upon Bully's announcement, Jack Thompson not only set out to get the game banned, but he went about doing so in the most incompetent way ever. From arguing that it should be banned because you can kiss other guys in the game, to claiming that it's a quote-unquote Columbine simulator. Ultimately, Take-Two Interactive stepped in and provided both the judge and Jack with a pre-release copy. Jack and the judge sat down together as they watched a Take-Two representative playing the game. No, I'm not kidding. And upon realizing that, well, everything Jackass had said about the game was blatantly false, the judge, thank God, did the reasonable thing and dismissed the case. Nowadays, if you go to the Jack Thompson Wikipedia page, you'll see him described as an activist, not an attorney. And this is because he was disbarred in 2008 for behaving like a child every time he didn't get his way. For instance, in response to the judge's ruling, he said, "You did not see the game. You don't even know what it is you saw." The judge, in response, filed a complaint to the Florida bar describing Jack's conduct as inappropriate, unprofessional, and contemptible.
Is that a brick?
Oh my gosh, this is gonna get brutal.
Whoa!
Oh my gosh.
This game was banned in Brazil.
1 month following the release of Bully Scholarship Edition, Brazilian judge Flavio Rebelo banned the sale of Bully in Brazil. As explained by the Rio Grande do Sul state prosecutor, this was done because, quote, everything in the game takes place inside a school. Anyone who's actually played Bully knows that this is false. Quite the opposite, most missions take place outside of the school, not that it should matter. In response to the ruling, a Take-Two representative, Edward Nebb, basically said, meh, we're still gonna make a bunch of money off of this. And they did. Bully is still to this day considered by Rockstar as one of their top 4 most popular titles, right behind LA Noire. They've even began including Scholarship Edition as a free download if you sign up for GTA+. Public opinions on video games have made a huge shift over the years, and I believe this was a big part of why the Brazilian government never bothered prosecuting anyone when Bully was re-released in 2016. I should also mention that this law, surprise surprise, had the opposite of the intended effect. It contributed contributed heavily to the popularity of the game. If you tell an entire nation of people that they're not allowed to play a certain video game, then all you've done is spark even more interest around said game. It's an exercise in futility, and it punishes citizens for doing something that has zero deleterious effects on society whatsoever. And speaking of being upset over nothing, when Scholarship Edition came out on the Xbox 360, the developers included many different achievements, and one of them caused a bit of a stir. Over the Rainbow requires you to receive 20 kisses from either Trent, Kirby, Cornelius, Gord, Vance, or Duncan. And according to TrueAchievement.com, 31% of players have this achievement, which means that 31% of you are gay. Looking back at it now, you might initially think that there wasn't much of a backlash, but fans were heavily divided on this. Even going to giantbomb.com and reading some of the posts, you can see that a lot of them thought that this was Rockstar Games forcing some pro-gay agenda. Some even outright spouting homophobic vitriol. You guys do know this game has an anti-bullying message, right? You also saw plenty of voices pointing out how much of a non-issue this all really is. It's an Xbox 360 achievement. You don't unlock anything for doing it, you just get some gamer score. God, I always hated that term. I always liked the option to go with boys and girls, just like in real life. I have lots of homosexual friends and I accept them for who they are as people, but I do not support their lifestyle. What? I personally think it's awesome. I could care less. By the way, saying you could care less implies that you do care to an unspecified extent. I'm just saying. This one has to be my favorite though. I don't mind it being in the game because you should have a choice, but for a heterosexual man like myself, that was pretty disgusting having to go through all of that for the points. Of course, I suppose from a gay person's point of view, having to go through heterosexual making out sequences could be gross. Actually, making out is kinda gross to watch anyways. You started out being immature, you then considered the experiences of others, and you landed on making out is gross either way. Based. Personally, the only thing that I was ever concerned with was making sure my dad didn't walk in anytime I kissed Trent. Leave me alone, I was discovering bisexuality around that time. It should also be noted that Bully has another achievement for kissing girls, Casanova. And actually, there, you have to get 25 kisses instead of 20. Much like the Postal series, Bully has been through its own fair share of controversies, ranging from judges and lawyers to activists, and even its own intended audience. And despite all that, despite every time people wanted this game off the face of the earth and erased from existence, it has stood the test of time, and its fan base has only grown over the past almost 20 years. Bully resonates with people in ways that most video games can't. In a modern-day climate of AAA studios effectively shitting out games that quickly become outdated and forgotten, Bully, a much smaller game, has succeeded far more than I think anyone ever anticipated, including Rockstar. There was even a point where Bully 2 began trending on Twitter, not because anything actually happened, but simply because a lot of people started talking about it. There's a huge demand, and Rockstar is well aware of it. So really, I don't think it comes down to the game being too controversial. It's more about when it makes the most sense to do a sequel. As Dan Houser himself said, we knew that we didn't want to start doing the Bully sequel instantly at the second with those guys. There was just no impetus to do that then, so we said, you can do Max, and then we will see what we can do with Bully. Granted, this was a long time ago, but it goes to show that the main factor all along was timing, not controversy. Not to mention that there already exists a Bully 1. If or when the news media or concerned parents start freaking out, we can just point them to the original game. None of the things they said would happen ever happened, and the game was so far removed from being a Grand Theft Auto set in a school that anyone in 2006 who made those arguments all of a sudden stopped talking about it after release. So yes, I do think Bully 2 is very much possible today. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And make sure to join my Discord, link down below. 18+, by the way. Anyway, that's it for this video. You folks, as always, stay classy. Peace.
They say that kids imitate characters in video games, but I have yet to become a mustached plumber.